Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Zurich Security Guard's Private Investigators and Alarm Installers Program webinar. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. If you have a question at any time, you may submit your question by typing it in the question box located on the left side of the screen. If anyone should require assistance during the conference, please press star then 0 on your touch-tone telephone. I would now like to turn the conference to your host, Ms. Nancy Wilson.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Wilson, a member of Zurich Programs and Direct Markets, the marketing team, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to today's webinar highlighting Zurich Security Guard's Private Investigators and Alarm Installers program. We are happy that you've joined us for this, the 15th webinar we've presented as part of the Z Programs Match webinar series. And as most of the agents on the line know, Z Programs Match is an online tool that connects retail insurance agents with program administrators writing programs offered through Zurich. Our webinar today will run approximately 25 to 30 minutes with an additional 15 minutes reserved at the end for your questions and our answers. So feel free to submit your questions at any time during the webinar by typing them in the question box that you'll see on the lower part of your screen. The webinar will leverage the knowledge of Zurich's program administrator. You will learn about program segments, industry and market trends, the broad appetite for this particular program, as well as coverage highlights, unique options, and competitive advantages. And we're going to wrap up our session today by showing you how to access this program and more than 50 other Zurich programs available through zprogramsmatch.com. Within the next couple of days, be on the lookout for an email that will include a link to our education center on zprogramsmatch.com where you can download a copy of the webinar presentation slides that we're showing you today. Our presenters are Security Industry Specialist Brian Costanza and Zurich Program Specialist Kathleen Eriks. Brian Costanza is the Executive VP at the Program Administrator for Zurich's Security Program, and he is responsible for managing and underwriting National Security Program multi-line casualty products, including general liability, workers' compensation, EPL, EBL, umbrella, crime, and auto. Brian has 10 years of underwriting experience in the security industry, and we are pleased that he's joined us today. Kathleen Eriks is a senior underwriter for Zurich Programs and Direct Markets. Kathy serves within the Professional Services Profit Center, and she's responsible for underwriting for numerous professional liability programs, including Travel Agents and Tour Operators Program, Security Guards Program, as well as the Title Agents Program. Kathy joined Zurich in 2004, and she has 15 years of experience in the insurance industry. So without further ado, here is Brian to start things off.
Good morning, everyone, and again, this is Brian Costanza. Thank you for joining us. There are 3 unique segments to our security industry programs: physical security and patrol services, investigative firms, and the alarm installation and monitoring firms. We'll address more specific underwriting criteria in a later section, but I just wanted to take a moment and introduce these segments. Within our security and patrol services, we typically target firms with posted guards or firms that provide vehicular patrol. Typically, these firms are going to service industrial clients, office buildings. On the patrol side, it may be residential areas. Our private investigation segment is primarily composed of one-man operations, though we do see some firms that have several employees. It's typical to see retired law enforcement or military enter the investigative community. Many of these operations include surveillance, background checks, some security consulting. In fact, insurance carriers are large customers of our investigators, and with them, they primarily look into workers' comp fraud or property loss, things of that nature. Finally, we have the alarm segment. Here we target firms that install fire and burglary alarm systems. A lot of this work also involves some low voltage wiring as well. While we do see the majority of our installation companies subcontract the subsequent alarm monitoring service, we do see a few firms that do both installation and monitoring. Our programs will consider companies that do both, as well as companies that only monitor or only install. At this point, I would like to shift our focus to industry and market trends. 9/11 had a great impact on the security industry. Immediately following the September 11th attacks, we saw a large increase in security demands across the country. It really seemed as though our clients were nearly doubling the number of contracts they had overnight. As 9/11 becomes more distant, however, it does seem that the security demands are retracting. I think that there are really two driving forces here. First, as more time goes by, people are generally not as concerned with security as they were during the aftermath of September 11th. And second, the overall economy seems to have individuals and businesses requiring less security. I find the second point interesting because we've learned through our experience that a slowing economy typically lends to increased crime rates. From an underwriting perspective, it is a little alarming, no pun intended, that we see security demands down as crime goes up. A quick example of what we're seeing, say we have ABC Security Company that provides 2 guards to patrol a commercial office building after hours. In an attempt to address their own economic concerns, the property owner cuts the security at the building from 2 standing guards to 1. It is very typical of what we're seeing with our clients now. So the building really requires 2 guards. Our client has gone out, done a full survey, and they feel that 2 guards are needed. The crime in the area is increasing, but now we just have 1 guard. It's concerning from an underwriting perspective to consider that the building isn't properly secured because 2 people are really needed. Fortunately, we aren't seeing a noticeable increase in frequency at the moment, but I do still think it's a concern. The overall segment is consistent with the soft P&C market, which, as you all well know, is characterized by low rates, high limits, flexible contracts, and an increase in capacity. Additionally, we are seeing several new players in the niche. I would say over the last 20 years that we have been specializing in the security industry, there are really 5 large players that probably, wrote about 85% of the business. But it does seem that we have a lot of new carriers trying to enter it. We've seen this during previous soft cycles, and I anticipate what I call these cash flow underwriters to exit sooner than later. Specifically to the security industry, I've seen that our clients' revenues are down approximately 30% over the past 2 years, which I do think is consistent with other segments in our economy. As I said before, I do find it a little concerning that when we consider that the crime's increasing, but clearly security needs are recessing with how our clients' businesses are down 30%. As with the new carriers that have tried to enter the security arena, we also challenged with a lot of new security startups. And the problem I see here is that many of the owners aren't properly qualified and are really just looking for additional revenue. Finally, I would just like to touch on what I think is a really unique brokerage opportunity with us here. I assume that your overall premiums are consistent with the market and are down. I think a new niche like the security industry, if you've not worked with companies in security before, it may allow you to grow your books of business, and the whole time while we provide the industry and underwriting expertise to make sure your clients are properly covered. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Kathy Eriks to discuss our appetite.
Thanks, Brian. Good afternoon and welcome. As Nancy said earlier, my name is Catherine Eriks, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. We're so excited to have this opportunity to share our program information and look forward to doing business with all of you. Earlier, Brian took you through our program segments, which gave you a general idea of each of the classes that we write within this program. I would now like to go into a little further detail on the risks within each segment that are acceptable for this program. As you can see, we have a very broad appetite from the risks listed on this particular slide. However, if your client's particular risk is something that you don't see on these lists and that you're not really sure if it would fit into the program, please do not hesitate to submit the application anyway, so that we'll take a look at it and be able to communicate and see what we can do. So we'll begin with the security and patrol. You'll see that the risks listed here are fairly common and straightforward for this segment. If you've worked within this particular segment before, these are many risks that you probably are familiar with. They don't seem to bring us any specific issue or cause for concern. That's why they're just pretty much listed here, pretty straightforward. Armored cars, casinos, bingo halls, construction sites, providing security for construction sites and warehouses, courier escort, hotels, motels, industrial sites and warehouses, like I said. So these, like I said, these are pretty straightforward and common. So this brings us to the next slide that lists some of the risks that may have a little bit, a few certain conditions or may need to have a little further explanation. So we start off with airports. We have employee parking lots and office buildings. This is the majority of what we generally see when the firm is providing services at an airport. We typically do not see any risks that are performing baggage or luggage screening. That's primarily handled and controlled by the TSA. You have executive protection, and some may think that this would define bodyguard services. However, our program definition is an individual hired as a security planner offering concierge-type services for clients who might be able to afford this extra sense of security. For example, you might have a CEO of a high-profile company who hires a security planner when he or she travels to a certain location with his family on vacation and so on. They may need help with security measures, someone that will consult with them and tell them, you know, this is where you need to be, this is where you shouldn't go, or so on and so forth. Institutions and hospitals, pretty straightforward. Low-income housing apartments, catering to the elderly only. Government and low-income subsidizing housing is not acceptable for this program. Restaurants, you have fast food, full service, as long as the majority of the receipts are derived from food sales and not from the sale of liquor. However, this doesn't include wholesale manufacturers such as breweries and distilleries. Schools, parking lot patrol only, including buildings after hours. However, we would look at small independent schools and colleges where security is present during school hours. For example, a community college may have classes in buildings contained in a business park setting, not necessarily on a campus setting. We would definitely consider something like that. Then we have special events, sports events, concerts, parties, where the firm would be providing a presence, maybe at the entrance to the venue or at the ticket booth.